Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good luck sleeping. You're watching PNT. I'm your host, bidding you welcome to another episode of PNT's Strange Mysteries. This time, we're pleased to bring you the mysterious and compelling story of the Betz Sphere. Did one family in 1974 find an alien artifact? Let's get the facts. March 26, 1972. Inspecting the damage from a brush fire across their 88-acre patch of woodland on Fort George Island, Florida, Antoine, Jerry, and Terry Betz discover a small metallic orb in the center of the fire damage, but curiously, there is no sign of a crater, and there is no apparent heat or impact damage on the object. The size of a bowling ball, the orb measured just under 8 inches in diameter and weighed roughly 22 pounds. The sphere was of highly polished metal that had no seams, only a mysterious elongated triangle stamped into the surface. Terry and his parents believed they might have come across a NASA or Soviet satellite or an old-fashioned cannonball which someone had silver-plated. Curious, Terry decides to put the ball in their car and drive it home, where he shows it to 12-year-old Wayne. Wayne apparently didn't know what to make of it either. Terry puts the orb on a window seat in his bedroom, where it sits forgotten as no more than a curiosity. 2 weeks later, Terry is entertaining his friend Teresa Frazier in his room. As he plays his guitar, the orb begins to vibrate, like a tuning fork, and emit a throbbing sound when certain notes are played. This sound appears to severely disturb the Betz's poodle, causing her to whimper and put her paws over her ears. Over the following days, the family begins to notice the orb has other properties. When pushed across the floor, it would stop, vibrate momentarily, and then change direction several times before returning to whomever had set it in motion. After repeated experimentation and observation, Terry noticed that the orb appeared to be affected by weather conditions, becoming more active on bright days and less on cloudy days, perhaps indicating that solar energy was in use. While reactive to sunlight, curiously, the orb seemed to be unaffected by heat or infrared light wavelengths. The orb was known to vibrate at a low frequency and sounded as though a motor were running inside. Turning from observation to experimentation, science student Terry began to examine the orb in detail. When tapped gently with a hammer, the orb would ring like a bell. In one experiment, the ball was placed on his mother's heavy glass dining table. Starting from the center, the orb would repeatedly roll to the edge of the table, stop, and then reverse direction, seeking out another edge before repeating the process. Terry decided to take the experiment one step farther, tilting the tabletop at an angle, whereupon the orb reportedly began to spin up the incline under its own momentum, an act that defies the traditional laws of gravity. Not once during the experiments did the orb fall from the tabletop, giving strong indications that the ball was perhaps intelligently controlled or acting by some unknown instinct of self-preservation. This preservation instinct apparently extended to shaking the ball, as numerous reports stated that the orb would feel just like a huge Mexican jumping bean trying to get away from you. The orb apparently did not limit its wandering to only those times when it was under examination by the Betz family. It was reported by them that the ball would independently navigate throughout their home, as if exploring their environment. Growing increasingly concerned and by now fairly convinced that the ball was under some form of intelligent control, the family took to placing the orb in a sealed canvas bag at night to prevent it from escaping. Finally, after almost a week of observations and head-scratching experimentation, The family decided to enlist help from the public in solving the mystery of the sphere. Jerry Betz placed a call to local paper, the Jacksonville Journal, who were intrigued enough to send out veteran reporter and photographer Lon Anger. A known skeptic, Anger wondered just what crackpot scheme he was being sent to cover now. Arriving at the Betz home, Anger was promptly shown the sphere by Jerry. Later relating the initial meeting to the St. Petersburg Times, Anger states, "I'm leery of this kind of thing. When I got there, Miss Betz said, 'You won't believe this if you don't see it.'" With the skeptical photographer waiting, Jerry placed the ball in Anger's hands and instructed him to gently push it across the floor. Anger describes the event, stating, "She told me to put it on the floor and give it a push. It rolled a ways and stopped." "So what?" I said. "Just a minute," she replied. "It then turned by itself and rolled to the right about 4 feet. It stopped. Then it turned again and rolled to the left about 8 feet, made a big arc, and came right back to my feet." Amazed, Anger examines the orb closely and could find no evidence of seams or manufacturing marks, only the mysterious triangle stamped into the surface. After taking a few photos, Anger returns to his editor shaken and excited. Deciding to run with the story, the Jacksonville Journal publishes the account, and within days, a tidal wave of worldwide media attention descended upon the story. Organizations such as the New York Times, London Daily, and journalists from as far as Japan traveled to the Betz home to witness the inexplicable orb for themselves. To a man, skeptical visitors left with their jaws agape, unable to explain the strange events. But the press weren't the only ones to grow interested in the sphere. Still believing that they might have inadvertently recovered a NASA probe or military craft, the Betzes took the orb to Jacksonville Naval Station. After relating their story to the commanding officer and surrendering the orb for examination, Jerry Betz stated that the family would return the orb to the Navy or any one of the armed forces if the government could prove a military origin. But if not, she requested the military return the object along with any information that they could glean about it. Placed in the care of Chief Petty Officer Christopher Berninger, the Navy attempted to X-ray the sphere. Berninger later reported, "The first X-ray attempts got us nowhere. While waiting for a more powerful X-ray machine to be brought in, the military specialist performed spectrographic tests to determine the composition of the sphere. Examination showed that the orb measured precisely 7.96 inches in diameter, weighed approximately 21.34 pounds, appeared to be hollow, and had a half-inch thick shell, which was capable of withstanding pressures of 120,000 pounds per square inch. Testing showed that it was composed of a high-grade stainless steel alloy called magnetic ferrous alloy number 431, a metal used by the military and avionics industry for high stress and high temperature environments. The Navy was surprised to discover that the sphere was intensely magnetic and possessed 4 different non-concentric magnetic poles, 2 positive and 2 negative, which is a geophysical impossibility. While this ball showed no signs of radioactivity, the Navy was able to confirm that it was directly influenced by sunlight, but not by other forms of radiant energy. With the arrival of the more powerful X-ray, the sphere was once again probed. The results were startling, showing that there were 2 smaller objects inside this orb, each also a sphere showing a marked halo effect, made of unknown materials with an extremely high density. Wanting to see what was inside, Berninger requested permission from the Betz to cut the orb open, but Jerry refused. After the Navy had examined the sphere for more than 2 weeks, They returned it to the Betz family and stated that the origins, identity, and purpose of the sphere was unknown, and that it had never belonged to the United States Armed Forces. The Marine Corps soon wanted its own crack at the sphere, and sent 3 weapons experts to the Betz residence to investigate. After examining the sphere, a U.S. Marine spokesman reluctantly admitted on television during an interview that the orb had indeed behaved in an odd manner in his presence, and stated that he was unable to identify its origin or purpose. In the official press statement released along with the interview, the Marines unequivocally agreed with the Navy assessment that the sphere was not the creation or property of the U.S. government. Needless to say, the Navy and Marine Corps statements only stoked the media frenzy around the Betz family. A frustrated Mrs. Betz stated, "We came to Fort George Island to get away to a serene atmosphere. Now we can't get away from the telephone. It means nothing to people in the West that it's midnight here, and when they quit calling, those on the East Coast wake up and start." As the Betz family had hoped, the media frenzy had one positive side effect. It attracted the attention of qualified scientists. The family was soon contacted by a Dr. Carl Williston, a physicist from the oddly named Omega-1 Institution, a research firm based in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. After testing the orb for more than 6 hours, the physicist confirmed the Navy discovery of multiple magnetic poles within the sphere, stating that the phenomenon he witnessed was, quote, a mind-bender, because the flux density of the field fluctuated in potency based on an as-yet unidentified pattern, thereby violating the known laws of physics. Dr. Williston later admitted in an interview with Canadian newspaper The Citizen that he had been unable to determine a pattern in the movement or explain how it was even possible. Williston also detected radio waves coming from the globe and a magnetic field around it. Its metal, he claimed, contained traces of an unknown element. Other than giving these details, Dr. Williston declined to comment on the possible origins of the sphere or its purpose, refusing to even speculate on the matter. In what is certainly a delicious irony, the infamous National Enquirer magazine stepped in at this point and assembled a blue ribbon panel in New Orleans, a panel made up of noted scientists, including Dr. Leo Sprinkle, Dr. Robert Cregan, Dr. James Harder, Dr. J. Allen Hynek, and a smattering of government experts and officials to investigate. Not trusting to a courier service to transport the sphere, Terry Betz personally drove the odd object to the conference on April 18, 1974. Over the next 2 days, the orb was once again subjected to intensive examination and testing, with the assembled panel again confirming the Betz family's observations and the previous Navy, Marine, and Omega-1 Institute findings. The panel as a whole, however, admitted that they could not come to a definite conclusion as to the origin or purpose of the object. Dr. Hynek was later quoted as stating, "None will go so far as to say it is extraterrestrial. They would be putting their scientific reputations on the line." The waffling of the group did not sit well with everyone on the panel, however. Professor James Harder from UC Berkeley later made an announcement at the International UFO Congress in Chicago in 1977 that he had concluded upon further study that the 2 inner spheres were made of elements heavier than any known to Earth science, and a strong possibility existed that if the orb were opened forcibly, the elements might go into critical mass and detonate an atomic blast. Stridently warning about this possibility, Harder cautions against further investigations of the Betz Sphere. Alarmed and abuzz with concern and excitement about Harder's claim that the orb could be a ticking atomic time bomb, the press attempted to contact the Betz family for their reaction to the news. Their calls went mysteriously unanswered, and visits to the extensive Betz home revealed that it had been abandoned, and the entire Betz family and the mysterious sphere had utterly vanished. Whether Antoine, Jerry, and Terry had finally had enough of the non-stop media attention and moved to another area anonymously to find the peace and quiet they had originally sought, or if they had been relocated by unknown forces now concerned about the dire possibilities the orb represented, we may never know. Attempts to track the Betz family and the orb over the ensuing years since the mystery first unfolded have always proved futile. The whereabouts of the family and the orb itself are unknown. Other than a small handful of photographs and newspaper clippings, there is little evidence left to follow. Later examinations of the evidence collected by the Navy, Marines, and the panel led to speculations on the nature of the sphere that ranged from ball valves, fuel tanks from NASA spacecraft, military sea bottom markers, and even lost parts of a modern art sculpture from a New Mexican artist. But none of these explanations match entirely nor explain the inner objects seen on the X-rays, the unusual magnetic fields emanating from the sphere, the internal dual magnetic poles, nor a host of other phenomenon associated with the orb, including possible but unconfirmed paranormal events. So for decades, the Betz Sphere has remained a puzzling dead end, with few leads and no physical evidence of the mysterious orb to examine. PNT is now pleased to announce that this may no longer be the case. In searching for reference material on the Betz Sphere, we found video recordings of a similar orb. Recorded at a private location and uploaded on YouTube channel Ronnie Dawson, the following footage appears to show a near duplicate of the Betz Sphere. Purportedly found after a decade-old UFO incident witnessed by a Taos, New Mexico family, their account states that on the morning following their sighting, 11 of these spheres were left laying across their lawn. Rather than contact the authorities, the family apparently decided to keep at least one of the spheres in their private collection. Passed down over the years and apparently concerned with the sphere being lost, the owners have come forward and offered the object to Mr. Dawson for examination. After exposing the sphere to a high-voltage Tesla coil, the orb began to exhibit odd behaviors, matching those of the Betz Sphere. The following footage documents these incidents. Let's have a look.
Anyway, so I'm going to show you this video, and like I said, we're still looking for someone to x-ray this, so if you have the capacity to x-ray 1.5 inches of steel with a mobile unit, please contact me, Ronnie Dawson, and so that we can get that done, because we'd like to see what's on the inside of this thing. We think it warrants further investigation, and I wouldn't have taken my time to go. It's a pretty lengthy drive down there to investigate this thing, and confidence is high. This thing came off a ranch in New Mexico about 10 years ago. It's a ranch off out in the middle of nowhere. It's not next to a highway or any place where this stuff could have rolled off a truck or anything like that, but it was associated with the UFO sighting over this ranch house. It scared the hell out of the family that lived there, and the next morning they came out and there was like 12 of these things laying on their lawn. So this is one of the 12 things, and the guys had it for years. So and we're checking it out, and confidence is high that this is not something normal, something explainable. So and like I said, you can see the video. I don't have no idea for a fact that this is part of a UFO, but I can't say that it's not either. So hello, this is Ronnie Dawson. I'm getting up close and personal with Jim Martin's Sphere. We came over here, we measured it. It has a circumference of 32.75 inches, 85 centimeters. We have a width of 9.75 inches. It has a weight of 50.6 pounds. The radiation is 0.94 YSU LH, whatever that is. Anyway, let me show you.
Hotspot. You go to your settings and you type in hotspot in the.
This is a sphere of Jim Martin's that came from a UFO. I want to show you one of the. It seems to have this sleeve in it. It has a very tight circle. I mean, you can barely feel it with your fingernail. You can barely notice it. Fits incredibly tight. It seems to go plumb through the ball. Look how close this thing is cut. It looks enlarged here on the camera. You can barely feel it with your fingernail. And it seems to have some, likes when you put it down, it likes to roll. And it likes to keep rolling. I'm just going to sit it down here on the floor. You can actually hear it. I know why it's not rolling. I can hear the sand on the floor underneath it. Holy cow. Look, it did a circle. It did.
So is this perhaps another sphere, similar to the Betz, that has turned up after decades of obscurity? The two stories do bear remarkable similarities, and as can be seen in the footage, there is no denying that the movement patterns are eerily similar. But how about the veracity of this new footage? Could this be a hoax? As our viewers are aware, PNT always strives to present the various viewpoints on the paranormal, but primarily uses rational methodology and the guiding principle of Occam's razor while examining all evidence. Naturally skeptical at first, PNT initially saw nothing in the footage that could not be explained by simple physics, until this point. While the footage showing the ball moving in a distinct curve around the red post in the room is no doubt startling, for PNT it was the moments after that were the most compelling and puzzling. As we can see, the sphere undeniably changes directions not once, but multiple times, and at right angles and in defiance of the laws of physics and inertia. Given the size and weight of the sphere, the orb should naturally find the lowest point of the floor, and infallibly roll to that spot, losing its momentum with each successive movement. To demonstrate this, PNT performed a series of experiments with this meditation sphere. Also made of steel, this ball contains another small sphere within it, very similar to the Betz and New Mexico spheres. We reasoned that while these sizes are not exact, the principles should remain the same. Placing our small sphere on the same spot on top of tiles similar to that as seen in the video, we observed the results, and each time, as we predicted, the ball would return to the same relative position, seeking out the lowest point on the floor. We even attempted to spin the ball inside our sphere to produce a counter-rotation, as described in the Betz's account, but to no discernible effect. Even accounting for minus surface imperfections on the surface of the floor and our sphere, the laws of physics still seem to apply, which is what makes the New Mexico footage so fascinating and bizarre. According to these universal laws, the larger and heavier sphere should have produced the same results, returning to the lowest point even faster or not moving at all, unable to overcome the loss of inertia. As can be seen, this is not the case. Other than the initial bit of inertia imparted by the slight push given by the witnesses, the orb seems not only to move under its own power, but also to generate additional inertia, in apparent defiance of the laws of physics. So where could this motive power be coming from? We have seen evidence of internal motive power, but what about the possibility of external forces? PNT considered all the various ways of replicating the motion seen here, from nylon fishing line to tilting surfaces. The more we attempted to logically explain the phenomenon, the more difficult and unlikely the possibilities became. The physical and mechanical difficulties with manipulation using lines or wires tend to rule this possibility out. Likewise, the idea of constructing a false floor simply to guide the track of a massive steel orb like some strange game of labyrinth is appallingly unlikely, and akin to calling the Roswell crash a weather balloon. In the end, PNT could only surmise by process of elimination that the likeliest method of producing the results seen here would be an extremely large electromagnet placed either above or below the orb. But the power necessary to move a sphere of this size and weight are prohibitively expensive, unwieldy, and magnetic fields of the size and intensity needed would no doubt cause massive electromagnetic interference with the camera used to film the event. So what was the mysterious object described by the Betz family, examined by the Navy and Marine Corps, that puzzled experts and frightened one physicist into warning us of possible alien atomic annihilation? What happened to the Betz family and the original sphere? Could the New Mexico sphere be a duplicate of the Betz orb? Could it be part of an artist's sculpture as some papers claimed of the Betz? If it is, then how do we explain the anomalous behavior of the Betz and New Mexico spheres? What will further examination of the New Mexico sphere reveal? As Mr. Dawson states on the footage, they are currently looking for a facility with equipment capable of X-raying the New Mexico sphere. If you, or anyone you know, has access to or is able to provide access to such equipment, please contact Mr. Ronnie Dawson via his YouTube channel. As always, links are found in the description below. PNT holds out hope that further examination will turn up fascinating new mysteries about the spheres and perhaps generate a few answers about this decades-long mystery before the physical evidence vanishes into obscurity once again. We'll be following developments on the New Mexico sphere closely and will inform our faithful viewers of any new information. But for our part, PNT must admit that like so many others before us, we are left with more questions than answers. Having eliminated all of the logical possibilities, we are left, as Mr. Holmes observed, with the fact that whatever possibility remains, however improbable, it must be the truth. But whether the Betz and New Mexico spheres are alien probes, doomsday devices, remnants of industrial activity, or an extremely well-crafted and elaborate hoax, we'll leave up to our faithful viewers to decide. Sound off in the comments section below with your thoughts. That's it for this episode of PNT's Strange Mysteries. Be sure to click like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to be notified when we upload your next portion of the paranormal. I'm your host, reminding you to keep an open mind, because a closed one shuts out the truth.